Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the fourth teaching on the 7 points of mind training by Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje with Ngakma Nor'dzin, the author of Battlecry of Freedom. I'm Ngakpa ö-Dzin and I act as admin for the meeting. We're recording this for posterity. It will eventually appear on YouTube. And if you want to ask a question at any time, you can either raise a hand on Zoom or type a question in the chat box, and I will ask the question or invite you to ask a question or ask your question at the appropriate moment. Without interrupting the flow of the
We're not quite sure how we find the appropriate moment, but
we will find an appropriate moment to ask your questions, and all questions will be answered.
So I think you're beginning by reading page 288. This is the third point of the 7 points of mind training, transformation, transforming bad circumstances into the path of awakening.
When all experience is painful, recognize its single cause and be grateful to everyone and everything, everywhere, as the method of transforming experience. Embrace the indivisibility of emptiness, energy, and form, recognizing that emptiness protects the mind from deluded perceptions and response. Practice the 4 highest methods, immediately grasping all opportunities as the means to awaken.
Thank you. Last time we looked at the first 2 points in this section, so we're going to move straight into slogan 13, practice gratitude to everyone and everything, everywhere. This is really a further point on slogan 11, when the world is full of malice and bad circumstances, transform it into the path of awakening. We're grateful to everyone and everything everywhere, because without that there would be nothing to practice with. We'd just be left with this horrible vacuum of us, ourselves, as the only reference point for anything, and there would be no sense of reflection, interaction. There'd be nothing to work with there. So we're grateful to everyone because it's our interaction with other people that enable us to engage with practice. This can be through friendly, kind, lovely interaction with people, but even if we're having interaction with people that we are not finding so pleasant, that is wonderful, juicy material to work with as a practitioner. If something's making us uncomfortable, or we're feeling angry or whatever, that is the juice, that is what we're going to transform. So we're grateful for that. And everything, everywhere, if our life circumstances are tricky, then that again is an opportunity to practice. So there's, just as I said it when looking at that first point in this, that first slogan in this section, there isn't anything that cannot be approached through practice. There isn't any circumstance that isn't available for transformation. And so we are grateful for all those circumstances. We're grateful that our lives just afford these wonderful, rich opportunities to engage with practice. Is that a question?
No.
Come on.
No.
No? Mm-hmm. Now this next slogan, wow, this is quite a slogan, this one is. This puts a heck of a lot into a very short phrase. Meditating on the delusions as the 4 spheres, emptiness is unsurpassable protection. In some of the commentaries, this is split into 2 slogans, but in this version, it's a single slogan. So let's just tease this apart. Meditating on the delusions. So the delusions are our misinterpretation, misunderstanding, distortion of reality. This is our distortion of the reality of the way things are. And this distortion creates all the problems that we experience in our relationship with everyone and everything everywhere. Now, the delusions are divided into 5 aspects which relate to the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space. And we could spend all of this section and the next 2 sessions talking about the elements and the delusions and how they relate to the elements. But obviously we haven't got time to do that. But there's a book I would recommend called Spectrum of Ecstasy, written by Ngakpa Rinpoche. Ngakpa again was his name as an author, that goes into this teaching in wonderful depth and explains this whole body of teachings about how we can use the understanding of the qualities of the elements. So the quality of the earth element in terms of its solidity, and that it doesn't change and move very much. The quality of the water element, in that it can be rolling and boiling, or it can be frozen and icy. And also its reflective qualities, like the way a lake is perfectly clear and reflective. The qualities of the fire element, the way that it consumes that which feeds it. It's always, we have a log burner, so we're always having to add logs to it. It eats up the logs, it burns them away to almost nothing, and then it needs another log to keep going. And this is the quality of the fire element. But also the fire warms who is ever within its sphere. It doesn't discriminate. So the fire has this quality of warmth and lack of discrimination. Then the air element is very volatile, I think that's a word, that it moves and expands, and any space where there is air, it will completely fill the space. So it has this encompassing quality of just going with that energetic quality of whatever space it's in. And that quality of wanting to feel and wanting to touch every surface within the space and the space itself can become distorted into paranoia and the need to keep checking things, and that manifests as jealousy. But also its realized quality is this capacity to embrace everything and engage with everything without limitation. And then the space element is the space in which the other elements dance, the other elements perform. And the neurotic aspect of the space element is feeling overwhelmed by space and responding to that with depression. And the realized quality of that is ubiquitous intelligence, that you know, emptiness simply knows everything. It has that quality of knowing. So this teaching on the elements looks at how we misunderstand the elements in terms of emptiness and form. We split them into duality rather than experiencing them as a non-duality, and that creates an emotional response, and that is the delusion that is being talked about here. Now, the next part of this slogan, meditating on the delusions as the 4 spheres. Now, this teaching on the 4 spheres can be quite confusing. I think if you're not familiar with it, it can take a little while to grasp this teaching, because the fourth sphere is not separate to the other three. It is an expression of the unification of the three spheres. So I think there can be the misunderstanding of looking for a fourth sphere, whereas that's not what the teaching is saying. The teaching expresses the three spheres and calls their unification a fourth sphere. So these are the three spheres of emptiness, energy, and form, or body, speech, and mind, in terms of being a human being experiencing them. Now, the mind aspect of this is the empty aspect. This is the quality of emptiness that is primordial emptiness, the nature of mind. But it's not an emptiness that is a voidness. It's not an emptiness in which there is nothing. It's an emptiness of knowing without having had to learn anything. It is the nature of the mind to have this quality of wisdom without reference to anything. It's a potent, pregnant emptiness. So it's emptiness, but not in the sense of voidness. Then the next one is the sphere of energy. And an important point here is that in terms of our being, the mind rides on lung. Lung is the energy that flows through the body, and lung is intrinsically connected to the breath. Going back to that slogan about Tonglen, fix this practice on the breath, this is very connected to that slogan, that the mind rides on the breath. If the breath is purified and the breath is flowing freely, then the very nature of breathing is realized. So that quality of the breath and this Sambhogakaya, this sphere of Longku, the sphere of energy, they are intrinsically connected one with another. And then the last one is physicality, is the actual physical qualities of the body that are here to experience. Now, the point of this is that all those three aspects are there if you're alive, if you're a human being, if you have that physical experience of being born and living as a human being. But we can make contact with the subtle qualities of those, the subtle body, as well as the gross qualities of how we experience them as human beings. And so it's those qualities of awakened three spheres that are being talked about here. So this is the sphere of the potential of emptiness, the sphere of realized intangible manifestation in the terms of energy, voice, emotion, ideation, all those manifestations that are they're not physical. And then the third sphere is the sphere of body. This is Tulku or Nirmanakaya, and that is the physical sphere. And all these three spheres are engaged in practice. We can't engage in practice at the level of one sphere and ignore the others. All those three spheres have to be part of our practice. So then the last, we'll just say something about the fourth sphere. So the fourth sphere is called Nowoku or the Vajraku, Svabhavikakaya in Sanskrit. And this is, as I say, not a separate sphere. It's an expression of those three spheres as a completely inseparable, completely unified realized manifestation. And that is their true nature, to be this realized, non-dual, completely unified manifestation. And once one is able to make contact with the three spheres as that unification, then there's the possibility of the elements manifesting, arising from emptiness and manifesting either as tangible form or intangible form, completely clear and unimpeded and no longer distorted. So the delusions just simply disappear. It isn't that you have to tease them out. The sutric teachings talk about pulling out the delusions one at a time, weeding out the delusions. In Tantra, we transform them through symbolic practice, through arising as the Yidam. But in Dzogchen, they are simply, I say simply in the sense of uncomplicated, direct. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is simple in that quality of, it isn't something, it's something that is so close to us and actually so simple that we can't make contact with it. I think the example I would give here is that sense that can arise when you're riding a horse, because we use horse riding analogies in there, so I'll stay with that, of you're applying the aids, you're riding in the form that you've been taught to ride, but there's no need to think about it. There's no need to say to yourself, right, I need to apply this aid here. It's like you and the horse and the quality of riding become a complete unification without, it's seamless, without apparent effort. So it's the simplicity of that experience that it's very direct. It's uncontrived. That's the simplicity that we're talking about here. Now, the last part of this slogan is emptiness is unsurpassable protection.
We have a question that relates to what you've just said.
Okay, yeah.
From Rime. Can you tell me more about the difference between tangible and intangible emptiness?
No, it's tangible and intangible form. Did I say something stupid?
I think you said form.
There isn't. You can't say tangible and intangible emptiness.
I thought you said form.
Samten is typing, I believe. Okay.
Sorry, the joys of working on a German language computer. No, that's my faulty hearing. I apologise.
Okay, right.
Yes.
I think one thing that's these slogans, they all continually relate to each other. It's like a wonderful interrelated, interdependent mesh of teachings, and this one refers back to many of the others. Drive all blames into one, attraction, aversion and indifference, that was in the previous point of the three poisons. In terms of emptiness, energy and form, if we look at emptiness as the delusion of ignorance, then from that ignorance arise the delusion of attraction or the delusion of aversion, because ignorance classifies makes judgments, interprets experience referentially. From that referential interpretation arises attraction that makes you go in one direction, or aversion that makes you go in another direction. So if you can remain with the ignorance and not engage in the attraction and inversion, that is actually safer. That is actually going to protect you. Let's put that another way. If you have wisdom and think you understand a situation, don't feel you have to prove that by putting that out into the world somehow. Just remain with it. You may not need to question it, but don't feel you need to prove it to anybody else, because that's going to take you in the direction of referentiality. So again, emptiness protects the mind. In terms of meditation practice, we all have to engage in practices that enable us to make contact with the emptiness of the mind, to make contact with what we are when we're not doing form. Because what we do all the time is form. So we're always thinking, we're always doing, we're always making decisions about things, we're always judging things, we're always looking, hearing, seeing. We're continually engaged in form. And what meditation practice does is makes us stop. And when we stop, suddenly there's emptiness. And what we do at first is we continually fill it. We continually fill it with thought, or with emotion, or suddenly everything about the body's uncomfortable or itching, or oh, there's that really important thing I have to do, or oh, I've just remembered what I wanted to put on the shopping list and you have to write it down. All these things come in when emptiness is given the opportunity. Form doesn't like it because we're so addicted to form. And so all this comes in to fill that empty space. But we have to just keep letting that go. We just have to keep insisting, no, I am going to discover emptiness. I am going to let all this settle, recognize it as distraction, recognize it as it doesn't have to be dealt with in this moment, because I'm giving this moment to just being here. I'm just going to be here and allow myself to find emptiness. And that's really difficult practice at first, really difficult. It can be difficult for years, but eventually it does become possible to have that space, that spaciousness that grows within yourself, that spaciousness of mind that you become more familiar with, just allowing yourself to be comfortable in that empty space. And at first that's on your cushion, that's in your meditation practice. But then that starts to filter out into ordinary life. So that then, this actually brings us onto a slogan that comes later, so we'll refer back to this later. But then one finds that when something happens, there's a gap there before response. Or maybe there's not a gap at first, but there's a sudden awareness of response clicking in. That response to that stimulus that we had always interpreted as automatic and beyond our control, we can suddenly start to recognize that that response is actually a habit and a pattern. And it is actually possible to just refuse to engage in that habit and pattern. So then we go through that really frustrating period where we start to have the space to notice the pattern, but we still can't stop ourselves doing it. So there's stimulus A, which always irritates us. You see that the irritations are rising, but you can't stop yourself. Maybe you can stop yourself going into expressing it, but it is still arising. But nevertheless, the fact that you can do that, that you can see it arising, means that that spaciousness is protecting you. It's protecting you from entering into the pattern so automatically that you aren't aware that you're adding to the pattern. It gives you that space within your experience, in your life, that your patterns are no longer so automatic. Your patterns no longer rule you, rather than you becoming aware of them. So spaciousness protects us from adding to our patternings, making the furrow deeper, making it harder and harder to let go of these negative delusions, these unhelpful delusions that we are so patterned with.
Question.
I love this slogan.
This is Peter. You mentioned ignorance in terms of responding with attraction and aversion. How is it linked with indifference? Well,
indifference is the better of the three. So the trouble with attraction is that it leads to expression, and if that expression leads into a pattern of clinging and desire without reference to the needs of others, then that can be harmful. The problem with aversion is that it leads to wanting to destroy whatever is felt as threatening. To say you want to destroy it is quite strong, but ultimately that is actually what we want to do. We want to destroy whatever it is that is making us feel threatened, and so we respond in an aggressive and unkind way, even if it's only in our minds, even if it doesn't get as far as action. There's still that wanting to destroy what threatens us. Whereas with indifference, if we can remain in the ignorance of indifference, we don't care enough to go down the path of expression or down the path of aversion. And so it's a little bit safer in terms of how we might hurt the other person, and also in terms of how we might hurt ourselves, because the patterns of indifference aren't quite as strong and damaging as the pattern of attraction and aversion. So once again, emptiness is protecting us. I'm not saying that indifference is good. Indifference is still delusion. But of the three, it can be less harmful. So what we actually want to experience is emptiness. And that emptiness is the capacity to let go of the I that is the blame for everything. That I have to protect this or cultivate this or look after it, make sure it's well fed and looked after and pampered and all the rest of it. It's that protection of the I that is the ultimate problem. So it's ignorance that is the ultimate problem. And if we can truly become empty in relation to ourselves and let go of that me project, then that protects us from creating patterning. So I hope it's answered that. Any others?
Is indifference, this is Peter again, is indifference containing or reflecting less energy in a way?
Yes, yes. Indifference is certainly flatter than the other two. And And because it's flatter, it's not potentially got so many damaging qualities about it. Yeah. I mentioned expression and suppression. So the one that relates to indifference is dissipation. So if you have got anger and you don't know what to do with it, the better of the three is dissipation. Expressing it is harmful. Suppressing it is harmful to yourself and can be harmful to others. Whereas dissipating it in a neutral way, such as energetically doing the washing up or something and just letting the anger settle out, is the least harmful way of approaching that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the next slogan is apply the 4 highest methods. So this is another of the pithy ones, another one that you have to become familiar with the slogans in order that when this one comes up for you, you know what the 4 highest methods are. And these 4 highest methods fall into 2 groups. 2 of view and 2 of action. And the first one is living your life so that you are encouraging action. So we talk about view, meditation and action. We're encouraging action that is moving in the direction with and is congruent with realized view. So it's living with an awareness of the view of awakening. Now, in many of the commentaries, of course, they talk about merit here, but merit is very much a sutric perspective to this point, this slogan, and you don't talk about merit in the same way when we're talking about Tantra and Dzogchen. I'm trying to present this teaching with reference to all 3 vehicles, Sutra, Tantra and Dzogchen, and so merit is only one aspect of that. If you're engaged in sutric practice, then the idea is that you're creating the good karma through your activity and you dedicate that, and then that means that you accumulate merit. But from the perspective of Dzogchen, there is no one to accumulate. There is nothing to accumulate. There's no way it can be dedicated, and there is no merit, because spontaneity, self-realization arises in the moment. It exists in the moment. So there can be no sense in that way. So from the perspective of the first highest methods, if one is able to dwell in Rigpa, then you dwell in Rigpa. If you're not able to dwell in Rigpa, then you dwell in the nearest approximation to that you are able through your understanding and through your practice. So you live within the scope of your capacity, you live the view of awakening. The second one is basically saying the same thing the other way round. Don't do the things that move you away from awakening. So avoid the activities and the patterns and the patterns of speech and action that quite clearly contradict the view of awakening. So go forwards, don't go back, basically. That's what these 2 are saying. Move in the direction of awakening, don't move in the direction of more patterning. That's what these 2 are saying. So these are 2 points relating to view. The second 2 are welcome difficulties and an opportunity and embrace those difficulties as practice. So when things get tough, there can very much be an instant response to, oh, I don't like this, and forget about practice. That you try and engage in something to get rid of what's bad. So this is saying, just relax into your practice. Don't push away the things that are hard. Embrace the things that are hard as your practice. Don't think that you can only practice when life is good. Don't think that things being bad is a reason why you can't practice. And welcome the difficulties as opportunities to practice transformation, and then embrace them as your practice. So those are two of action. Any questions? No? Good. And then the last in this third point of the 7 points of mind training is immediately join whatever you meet with meditation. So this is very similar to slogan 9 in the previous point, the point on awakening, which was in all activities train with slogans. But that was from the perspective of enlightened activity and view. This one is from the perspective of embracing that you are a practitioner. All of this section is about, yep, I'm a practitioner. I'm engaging with the path. Whatever that path is, it doesn't matter what the path is, whatever the practice you've been given, you engage with that. So whatever occurs in your life, that becomes your practice. Whoever you encounter, whatever difficulties there are, whatever wonderful things there are, they're your practice. They're the stuff that you engage with in terms of transformation. So that is the thrust of this last one in the third point. So with these first 3 points of mind training, Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje has covered the base, the fruit, and the path. Now this teaching, base, fruit, and path, it's usually given in the order base, path, and fruit. This is a Dzogchen view of the teachings, but we can also look at this from the perspective of the other yanas. The first point was practice the preliminaries. What is the purpose of the preliminaries? The purpose of the preliminaries is to bring you to the base of your path, whether that's to the base of the sutric path, the tantric path, or the path of Dzogchen. The purpose of the preliminaries is to enable you to arrive at the base of that path. Then the fruit is a glimpse of what that path will lead to. So this was the second point. This is why we practice, and this is the view that we are embracing, the view of the nature of mind and the view of intention. That is what is being embraced. Again, this can be from the perspective of Sutra, Tantra, or Dzogchen. And finally, there is the path. The path is the third point of this teaching, where we engage with the methods that we're given through the vehicle, through the teacher, the path of that vehicle, whether it's Sutra, Tantra, or Dzogchen, we actually engage with those practices. So at this point in these teachings, Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje assumed you're a practitioner. I think that is quite important, that these teachings are in some ways accessible by beginners and by people new to practice, but they're very rich and deep if you have some experience of practice. And Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje, throughout, certainly through the next stages, is assuming that you are working on the preliminaries and making sure you're continually arriving at the base of your vehicle, that you have some glimpse of the purpose of practice, of the view and intention, and that you have methods of practice which will include the methods given here, but may include other methods that are not specified, but are certainly hinted at in these teachings. So we may just have time to do the fourth point. I haven't asked you to read something now because it's only 2 slogans in the fourth point. So the fourth point is applying essential practice and teaching to the whole of life. And there are just 2 slogans in this point. Apply the 5 perfect powers. The 5 powers are the only crucial manner of conduct. So the whole of the teaching in this fourth point are the 5 powers. Now, Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje does not specify what the 5 powers or the 5 strengths are. The word for power or strength is tob, and tob in itself is quite interesting to look at because this is one of the 10 parameters. It's the 9th. I said that wrong, isn't it? Parameters. I'm always doing that. This is the 9th of the 10 parameters. Now, some schools teach the 6 parameters. In the Arate lineage, we teach the 10 parameters. And so strength, tob, is the 9th of these parameters. And the point really to get over about these 5 qualities, these 5 powers, is that you are discovering them and developing them at the same time. That one engages in practice so they develop, and through practice they are revealed. So they are a little bit like the beginningless nature of mind, that all beings have the potential to recognize and realize these 5 powers, and they're always there, but practice gives you access to them. So practice both encourages their development and reveals them. So these 5 powers are confidence, perseverance, presence, attention, and discriminating awareness. Now, other commentaries have a different set of 5, and I will talk about that a little bit at the end. These 5 powers or strengths connect with several aspects of the teachings that are not specified at this point, but are most definitely pointed at or indicated, and that is refuge. Refuge enables us to develop confidence in Lama, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. That is the nature of refuge, that we develop that confidence. So that's the first strength. The 4 Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path are there in this teaching, and the 6 or the 10 parameters. So confidence, other words for confidence: faith, trust, willing participation, respect, engagement. So once you start engaging in any sort of practice, any practice, horse riding, you start to have some willing participation. You enjoy it, you want to do it more. You start to have some faith that what you're being taught actually enables you to stay on the horse and ask the horse to do what you want the horse to do. You have faith in your teachers and in the methods you're being taught, and you have respect for them, that those methods exist, that somebody has actually worked this out and is able to transmit that to you, and you engage with those methods through that confidence you develop. So this is very much connected to refuge, and the first three of the noble truths, in understanding that somebody has understood the nature of suffering, that it can end, and that there's a way it can end, that we have confidence that we are joining in with that, that we have become part of the community engaged in that. The second of the 5 powers is perseverance, or effort, energy, application. This is Tsondru. This is the 4th parameter. So this is that we persevere with the practice. Once we're engaged, we remain engaged. This requires some effort, some diligence, some application. But as long as the confidence remains, then that strength will grow. The more you practice, the more you get out of your practice, the more you realize how practice makes you a happier, a nicer person, hopefully. That there is more joy in your life. The more that happens, then the more you will want to persevere with that practice. The third strength is presence. And this is the 8th of the Noble Eightfold Path. So presence, recollection, alertness, paying attention, concentration. You remember the teachings because you're applying yourself to the teachings. You are present and alert when you're meditating. You engage with the practice that you're intending to do in that session. You keep that presence of where you are. You persevere, referring back to the previous one. You don't waffle around. You engage and you have presence there with what you're trying to do. You pay attention and concentrate. The next one is attention, and this is the 7th of the Eightfold Path. Other words are contemplation, deep concentration, absorption, meditative stability, undividedness. And this tob is called Ting-Dzin, which is a contraction of Ting-Nedzin. And all of you practicing in the Arate lineage will be familiar with this term Ting-Nedzin, which means absorption, undividedness. And the Ting-Nedzin are the fruit of the 4 Naljors. So the Ting-Nedzin, Zin means something like to hold, to have grasped, engaged with, to be undivided from. So you practice the Nundro, the preliminary practice of the 4 Naljors, and their fruit are the Ting-Nedzin, the 4 Ting-Nedzin. And once one has experienced Ting-Nedzin, then one is actually practicing Dzogchen. Then one is able to enter the practice of Dzogchen. So this 4th strength is telling us that the fruit will become a reality for you once you practice. It's almost like saying relax. You can't create the fruit. You can only get out of the fruit arriving, get out of the way of the fruit arriving. By letting go of the me project and discovering the nature of mind, the fruit of practice will naturally simply be there. So that this paying attention is knowing when to let go of effort, knowing when to let go of the practice and just remain. So one of the earlier slogans was something like, even the method itself dissolves eventually. So this is about just simply being with what is arising through practice. And then the last of these powers is discriminating awareness. And this is Sherab, the sixth parameter. In terms of the teaching on the 6 parameters, this is the highest parameter. This is the wisdom, intelligence, insight, discernment, and knowledge that we're aiming towards in terms of our practice. So this discriminating awareness arises through our practice and through learning, understanding, studying the methods of practice, and then engaging the methods of practice. And then wisdom naturally begins to arise. So what this point is saying, that if you've embraced the first 3 points of mind training and you're practicing, then the 5 strengths will be there. You will arrive at the point where the 5 strengths are appearing to you, are developing in you, and you can rely on them. I'll just say what the 5 strengths are in other commentaries. The first one is determination, which is very similar to perseverance. It's having the effort and energy to stick with the path, having the determination to continue with the practice. So that's very similar to the second in the first list I gave. The second one is familiarization, which is connected to confidence. So you learn mind training, you learn all the practices, you learn the teachings, so that when those pithy ones come up, you understand what they refer to. And then the practice naturally develops because you're familiar with it. The third one is the seeds of virtue. And the fourth one is remorse or self-approach. And both of these are a more sutric point of view. They're a more gradualist approach to the path of practice, because the seeds of virtue is looking at merit again. This is usually explained in terms of merit, that you are sowing, just as we talked about the 4 highest methods. The first one is you go in the direction that leads you towards awakening. This strength is that you are sowing the seeds of that. You are sowing the seeds that will lead you to awakening, the seeds of virtue. So this is more a gradualist approach. And remorse, that again refers to the 4 highest methods. When you've moved away from the path of awakening, you regret that. You have remorse for that. And you vow that you will do better. So it isn't that these 5 are irrelevant or wrong. I wouldn't ever say anything like that. I chose to use the other 5 because those are the 5 strengths as given by Kyabje Dujong Rinpoche, who was the greatest Nyingma teacher of our time. And Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje was a Nyingma whose practice was rooted in the ancient Nyingma tradition before the younger schools had come to dominate practice. And so it felt right to choose the 5 strengths as given by Chekhawa Yeshé. And then the last of the 5 that are given in other commentaries is aspiration, which is the 8th parameter. So this is again aspiring to engage in the path, aspiring to the fruit of practice. So I don't think that there's a huge discrimination between these 2 lists of 5 strengths. I think it's just that the emphasis is placed more in the sutric path, in the usual 5 that are given in commentaries, where the emphasis is placed more in the path of spontaneity and the Dzogchen path, or the path of transformation, in terms of the Nyingma 5 strengths. So that's why I went in that direction. Now that's all really looking at the first of these 2 slogans. The second slogan in point 4 is the 5 powers are the only crucial manner of conduct. And this is just reminding us that these 5 strengths are there all the time, that we must always have confidence in the teaching, we must always persevere, be present, pay attention, and embrace discriminating awareness at every moment of our lives. Many of the commentaries at this point talk about dying and how the 5 powers need to be present when one is dying, that one needs to remain with that strength, that confidence, and relying on practice and belief in the development of one's practice at the time of death, so that death can become itself practice at that time, that one is able to enter into the bardo experiences without losing contact with practice. So at the crucial manner of contact at all times of our life. Good, so I'm glad we managed to finish that point. So have any questions?
No, it's 7 o'clock.
Okay, so once again, we have come to the end of an hour of teaching. They do whiz by. Thank you very much. I think we're on schedule. 2 more sessions to go. I think we'll be okay. The 5th point isn't very big. And then the last 2, where most of the slogans are, they have the same flavor in a sense, so we'll be able to look at those a little more quickly in terms of individual slogans. So thank you very much. They are going up on YouTube. I'm getting them up on YouTube, so you can always point them to other people who've missed the session, or look at them again if you wish to, and do let me know if there's any problems with the videos. So thank you very much, and good night. I hope to see some of you at practice tomorrow.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Good evening. Bye.
Is that just end now?